Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can turn my layered SVGs, or in fact any layered SVG or any print then cut image, into a gorgeous greetings card with a fun shaped edge around it. This adds a whole new level of interest and intrigue to your card making designs. I'm going to show you how to do two separate ways in this video. The first is when your layered design is kind of square shaped or it matches the front of your card quite well. So in this one, we've got a really nice shape around the edge, and then the fold of the card goes down on the left. For this one, I've kept all of the layers in my card so you can see them all. I've cut them all out and stuck them together with some 3D foam pads to make a wonderfully three-dimensional appearance. For this card, I've done things a little bit differently. The fold is along the top, and that's because the shape of the cat is long and thin, so it just made sense to put the line along there. And also for this one, I've turned the layered design into a print then cut image. So I printed it on my home printer rather than cutting all the layers out of cardstock. We'll also go through how to make pretty inserts for the middle so that you can write your message on it. Let's get started in Cricut Design Space. The first side edge card we're going to make is probably the easiest, and this is where we put the picture along the right hand side of the card. I'm going to be doing a square card for this design because it matches the shape of the cat the best, but you can do it for any size card you want to make. This is my Burmese cat design, and it comes in two different colours. The first is an all brown design, and the second one, which is this one, is the Calico cat design, which has more colours in it. I'll add the links to all of these in the description of the video in case you want to go and get the SVGs. To start with our card, we're going to make the front of it first. So go into Shapes and choose a square. Size this to the size of card you want to make. I'm doing a 6x6 inch card, but because I know that I'm going to be using my pre-made envelopes that I've bought previously, the envelopes themselves that I have are 6 inches, so I need to make my card a little bit smaller, otherwise it won't fit. So I'm going to do mine to be 5.75 by 5.75 inches. To make it a bit easier to see what I'm doing, I'm going to change this to a lighter grey so I can still see the square, but everything I put on top of it is going to be nice and clear. Now as I'm dragging this cat, you can see it's underneath the square. We want to move it on top, so with the cat or the design that you're using selected, go into Arrange and then Center Front. We need to apply an offset to the cat, and that will give us a little border around the edge in the shape of the cat, which means that we can then cut out the edge of the card to match. Before I do that, I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller so it's more in keeping with the size of the card. It doesn't need to be exact at this point, but by making the cat relatively similar to the size we're going to be cutting out, it means that when you set the offset, it's just a bit clearer to see the size that you're going to need. So I'm going to go into Offset with my group selected and change the number to however big I want it to go. I like doing about 0.15 to 0.2. I think that's quite a nice size for this type of card. So mine's already set to 0.15, so I can just press Apply, and that does the offset. So if we look in the Layers panel now, underneath all of the cat layers, we've got a new one called Offset. I'm going to change the colour of this to something bright so it's really easy to see. Next, we're going to size the cat and get it into position. So click on the Offset layer in your Layers panel. Scroll to the top, and then where you've got the group name, which will be the file name of your layered design, press Shift on your keyboard and click that group, and then press Group at the top of the Layers panel. And that has now grouped the layered design with the offset so we can move it all at the same time. Because this design will fit nicely in my square, I'm going to make it the same height as the square, so 5.75 inches. Yours might not be exactly the right size, or if you're doing a really sort of tall, thin and tall, or long and narrow design, again, it might not fit your card front, but if that is the case, keep watching this video because I'll show you how you can work with that in part 3 of this video, so towards the end. For now though, I need to get this cat into position, so I'm going to drag a box around everything to select it all, and then go Align, Align Top, and align right. Now that's moved the square around, so now it's perfectly touching the top of my offset layer on the top and the right hand side. This is now ready for me to start cutting it out. There are a couple of different ways to do this. To start, I'm going to click on my group, which is the cat and the offset, and then ungroup it to separate that offset out again. And then in the group we've got left, which is the cat layers, I'm going to close those up by clicking the little arrow in the layers panel and just turn it off for now by pressing the I. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do the cutouts. The first is to select the offset layer, press Ctrl or Shift on your keyboard and choose the square, and then down the bottom press Slice. And this will cut the layers out from each other. So now if I drag it away, you can see we've got these different shapes. Now this only really works if your design is touching at the bottom and the side. I'm just going to undo all that moving around. And then in my layers panel, I'm going to delete this layer, which is the filled in grey cat. So now I'm just left with this outline and my red cat. So again, I'm going to undo that to put it back into place. And then I can click on the grey layer in the layers panel, go down to the bottom and press Contour, and then click into the pieces I want to remove. Close out of there, and now you're left with just these two shapes. So if I undo that again to put them back into position, you can now select both of those layers, and down the bottom of the layers panel, press Weld. And that will join them together, and that will be the base of our card. However, that slicing version, as I said, only really works if your offset has touched the top and the bottom of the design. If your image isn't quite reaching the top of the square or the rectangle you're using, that isn't going to work because you're not going to be able to contour out the shapes. So I'm going to undo all of this and show you a different way to do it. Okay, so now I've taken it back so it's just my red cat offset layer and the grey square. The other way to do it, which is actually my favourite way to do it, I think it generally works out a bit easier, is to go into shapes and choose either a circle or a square. Make it a nice bright colour so it's easy to see what we're working with. I might actually go a bit darker. Click the padlock icon and then we can move this into a rectangle. And then what I'm going to do is just drag this down and cover the bit that we want to cut. So along the bottom, it's where this cat meets the bottom of the square. I want it to cut there. I also want to get rid of the gap above the head and at the side of the head. So I'm going to right click and duplicate my blue rectangle, click the padlock again and resize it. And keep doing that until I've covered all of the bit that I want to cut out. So that would be that for me. Now I can click one of the blue rectangles in my layers panel, press Shift on my keyboard, choose the other ones, and then press Weld. That will join them together. So now I can press that blue layer, find my grey square in my layers panel, press Shift on my keyboard and click the square as well. So now I've got the blue and the grey squares selected, and now I can press Slice. I don't need the blue layers anymore, so I can delete both of them. And then I can also delete the part of the grey square that is going to be the part we don't need. So that's this one. Now I can choose the grey part I've got left, and then also select the red cat layer and press Weld. And now I've got that same shape that I made in the beginning version, but this one is a lot more flexible for in case your design doesn't quite reach the top or the bottom. Alright, so this will be the front of the card, but we also need to make the back. And I like making the back have the same shape around the edge. So to do that, I'm going to press Duplicate. And to make it easier for you to see, I'm going to change the colour of this one. I need to flip it, so go into Flip, and then Flip Horizontal. And then I'm going to roughly line these up so that they're touching. Now I know that my card is 5.75 inches on each side, so when I drag around both of these, it should come to 11.5 inches, which is 2 times 5.75. At the moment it's 11.513, which means they're not quite touching at the moment, so I need to move it a little closer. And now it's 11.486. That is very close to 11.5, so I'm happy with that. But at the moment, the top line isn't quite lining up right. So I'm going to go into align and then align top, just to make sure they are perfect along there. And then when I'm happy, I'm going to go down to the bottom and press weld to join those layers together. If I turn my cat layer back on now by pressing the I, and then clicking the group and going to arrange, center front, can see how this is going to look when we've got it all cut out. The one thing we have left to do is to put a score line down the middle. So go into shapes and choose a score line. This needs to be 5.75, which is the height of my card. And then with that selected, I'm going to press shift and click the red card background, go align, center, and that will put that score line directly in the middle. Now down the bottom of the layers panel, press attach, and that will join the score line to the card so that your Cricut knows where to score it. Now you'll notice when I did that, my score line went invisible, and that's because if we look in the layers panel, it's gone down underneath the red. That doesn't actually matter because it will still score it where we want it to, but it can be a bit confusing when you can't see it anymore. The reason it did that is it's actually a little bug in Design Space at the moment. It's to do with the order in which you select the layers when you attach them. So if you'd prefer to see that score line, I'm just going to undo the attach and try it a different way. So this time I'm going to press the red card first and then select the score line afterwards. And now press attach, and now that score line stayed on top. So if you select the card first, then the score line, you'll still be able to see it. I now need to move my cat back to the front, and there we go. This is now ready to cut out. One further thing you might decide that you want to do is to cut out the shape of the cat, the very bottom layer, to go inside your card using white so that you can actually write on it and be able to see your pen, especially if you are planning to cut the card out from a different colour. So to do that, click on the cat and press ungroup. Scroll all the way to the bottom until you get the bottom layer and press duplicate, and that will make a copy of that filled in cat. I'm now going to just hide my card so that I can easily drag a box around the cat again and group those layers. It's always nice to keep your layered designs in a group, as it means all your layers will stay in proportion if you change the size. It also makes it easier to move it if you want to move it about. So now this will cut from white separately, and I can stick it inside my card so that I've got something nice to write my message on. Here's my card all cut out and ready to stick together. Now I've cheated a little bit because this video is getting a little bit long, and I've already stuck the cat layers together. All of my layered SVGs come with an assembly guide PDF which shows you the order to stick all of the different layers together in, so it makes it nice and easy. I did this one a little bit different though, and I used glue for most of the layers, and I've only got, I think, 2, possibly 3 layers of foam pads, and that's because I didn't want to make my card too thick to post, so I didn't want to have to go up to a large letter postal stamp. For my card blank, I've also already decorated it. This is from a scrapbooking set that I bought probably about 15 years ago, so they don't make it anymore, but I like it because all of the papers match and it's got lots of die cut shapes in there. And then I've just added a little tag and put a happy birthday silver peel off sticker in there, and I've just popped that up with some foam pads. If I open the card up, my paper that I used is actually white on the back, so I don't need to stick my little insert cat in there because I'll be able to just write my message. But if your card was a darker colour, then you've got that little extra bit we cut out, and then you can write your message on there. So to stick my cat on the front, I'm just going to use some glue. My favourite glue for card making is called Cutouts. It dries clear and it doesn't make your card buckle or warp like some other glues can do. And that's why this is my favourite. And then I put it into these tiny bottles from Amazon, which have very, very thin tips on them. So it makes it really, really easy to get the glue in all the teeny tiny places. So let's turn this over. I'm going to add some glue. This is quite heavy with all the different layers, so I'm adding quite a lot of glue. And as I said, this glue is great because it doesn't buckle the card, so it's not going to damage either the cat or the card base that I'm about to put it on. So I can just get this into position with a little bit of green running all the way around the edge, which is where we did that offset. And then just push down gently because I don't want any of that glue to smush out the sides. And then when that's dry, that will be my shaped edge card all finished. So now let's go and see how to do it if you have a different shaped animal where it's a little bit more tricky to get the line down the side to form the edge of the card. The first cat we saw worked well as a card because it was quite a square design, so it was nice and easy to add onto the card. But what about if the layered design you're using is a little bit of a more tricky shape? So this Bengal cat, it's very long and also the tail comes up quite high, so it's going to be a bit more tricky to fit onto a card so that we can get a nice edge to it. If your layered design is more like this proportion, then what I would recommend is doing a top fold card. So the crease of the card will be along the top rather than the side. Let's do that for this design. I'm going to go through the steps a little bit quicker because they are very similar to what we've just done with the other cat. I'm going to go into shapes and choose a square. This time I'm going to click the padlock icon. And I'm going to do a card that is 7 inches long and 5 inches tall. So it's a 7 by 5 inch card. Let's make it a light grey like I did before. And then I need to move my cat to the front and roughly size it so it will fit on the card. Let's zoom in a little so it's easier to see. Then I'm going to click the cat and give it an offset. So just like we did before. This offset is 0.25, which is a little big. I'm going to change it to 0.15 and press apply. Okay, so let's change that offset layer to red just so it matches what I did in the first step. And then I'm going to select the group of the cat and the offset layer and group them together. So for this cat, again, I can make it the height of the card. So let's make it 5 inches tall. And then select that group and the square. And go align right, and then align top. And that's now aligned that tail to that corner, so it's ready for me to start cutting off the different parts. When you're doing a top edge card, it's important to remember that you need enough of the design so that it's not going to all fall apart when you cut it out. So I'm going to leave this area at the top as part of the grey card. At the bottom as well, you need to make sure you've got enough that the card will actually stand up. So because I have this gap of grey leading down to the bottom, I'm going to keep all of that. And then I'm going to keep the gap between the legs as well. So I'm just going to cut out this part down the legs. Let's go into shapes and choose a square. And I'm going to use this method to cut out the parts I don't want. So I'm going to start up here where I've got this tiny bit of grey in the top right. And then duplicate my square. And I'm going to cut it, I think, down to here where that back foot comes out. Although then it's not going to stand up so well because if you notice the red offset doesn't quite hit the bottom. So actually I want that bottom to be flat so it'll stand up better. So I'm going to do it to here so that it's still got that nice flat grey bit along the bottom. There's a couple more bits to cover. There we go. And then that's the only part for this one I'm going to cut out. So I'm going to weld the squares together. and then slice them out of my grey square. So again, I'm going through this quickly as it's the same steps I went through in the first part. I can now ungroup my cat layer and weld the grey and the red layers together. And now we have the shape. Now I'm just going to zoom in. You can see I've got a little bit here where my rectangles weren't quite lined up. And that looks a little bit messy. So I think what I'll do is just slice an extra piece off to neaten that up a little bit. So I'm just going to make a diagonal line there. There we go. See, that just looks a little bit neater now. Okay, let's zoom out and then move my cat back to the front. And you can see how that is going to look. And then for this one, I'm going to put the fold along the top, as I said. So let's do that. I'll need to zoom out a bit, move the cat to the side for now, and then duplicate my card. Make it a different color so it's easier to see where each one is. And this time I want to go flip, flip vertical. And that has made a flipped copy of it. So I can now line these two up. And then when I select both of them, it should come to 10 inches tall, no higher than that, or it won't go in my envelope. So if it's a little bit less, that's okay. I'm on 9.972, so that is pretty close. I also want to align them on the left, so let's go align, align left, and then I want to weld the layers together. Next we need the score line, so shapes and score line. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees by typing 90 in the rotate box, and that means my line is now horizontal. So I can turn it into 5 inches. Or was it 7? No, 7 inches, which is the length of my card. It's actually a bit shorter than that because remember we cut that top corner off, but that's okay. It doesn't matter if the score line goes over the edge a bit. I'm going to select both of those layers, the score line and the red card, and go align, center, and then attach them together. And then move my cat to the front, drag it into position. Now for this cat, I don't want to cut out all the layers from different colours of card. What I want to do instead is do this as a print and cut. So it will print the cat on my normal home printer, and then I want the Cricut to cut around the edge of it. To do that, select your cat group and then down the bottom of the layers panel, press flatten. This has turned it into a print and cut image, and what the Cricut will do is it will cut just around the edge of the cat, so then it will fit beautifully onto your card. So that's what I'm going to do for this particular one. Here's my card cut out and I folded it down that score line. You can see with the print and cut it comes out beautifully, and the Cricut's done a really good job at going around the outside. Now I've used this cat pattern scrapbook paper, and I kind of was feeling like my cat wasn't quite standing out enough against the background. So I went back into Design Space and I found the bottom layer of the cat that we used for the insert, and I gave that an offset, so I've got a slightly bigger version. And I thought that could sit behind the cat to make it pop out a little bit more from the background, and it definitely does do that, but I made that offset a little bit too big, so it's kind of touching the top and bottom of the card. But I still think I prefer how it looks with the orange, so that's what I'm going to go for to stick it together. I'm going to use some foam pads to stick both of these layers so it's got some nice dimension to it. I'll start with the cat, so let's turn it upside down. And I've got these foam pads. I'm going to cut them smaller so that I don't have to use as many, basically. And just stick these to the back of the cat. The photo paper that I cut the cat from is called Koala, which is why it says koala all over the back. I'm not sure if you can see that. but it's glossy photo paper and I got it from Amazon. This particular brand of foam pads is called Dot and Dab, and they're my favourite because the tops of the foam peels off really easily. You can see just how quick it is. And again, these are from Amazon. So I'm just going to get all of those peeled off. And then stick this to the middle of my offset layer that I made. So remember, this part isn't in the tutorial because I did it afterwards, just after cutting everything out. So that's nicely in the middle. Let's turn it over, and you could glue this if you wanted to. And that would mean it wouldn't be so tall, so it might be easier to post, but I'm going to add some more foam for a little bit more dimension. That is my foam pads all sorted, so now I can stick this to the front of the card. And as I said, because I did that extra offset, it's not quite going to line up as beautifully as it could have done. As long as it doesn't go over the edge anywhere, it's okay. I think that's all right. So if I was to do this again, I would have made this orange offset a little bit smaller so it would have fitted better. But generally, I'm really happy with how that is looking. It stems up nice, and it's just really nice to have an unusual card with a different shaped edge on it, and it'll still fit into a 5x7 envelope. Now on the inside of this one, because I use scrapbook paper, it is double-sided, so I'm going to add my cat shape to the inside so I've got something to write on. Again, I felt that didn't really stand out, so I did another offset layer, which is just going to sit in there. And because this is the inside of the card, I'm going to glue it rather than using the foam. I've got my little bottle of Cutouts glue that I mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to put a good amount of that on the back of this cat. Stick it into the middle of the orange one. What I like about using glue is it means you've got that little bit of wiggle room if you need to move stuff about, but if you prefer, you could use double-sided tape instead. And now I'm going to glue this one to the inside of the card. I like doing custom inserts on cards because it just makes it that extra little bit special when someone opens it up to see that you've spent the time decorating the inside as well as the outside. So this one's going to have to go quite close to the edge again because I did that offset a little bit too big. But there we are, and now I've got a nice amount of space to write on, but it also means the inside of my card is really pretty and it matches the front. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make your own side edge cards. If you'd like to take your card designing one step further, keep an eye out for my next video coming very soon, where we're going to do the same technique with the shaped edge along the card and the print then cut image for the dog. But I'm also combining it with other images in Cricut Design Space and more levels of offset so that we've got even more decoration and you can make something even more special. If you've enjoyed this video though, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for loads more Cricut Craft tutorials. Thank you for watching. Bye!